Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you and the ranking member for having this hearing, and thanks to our distinguished panelists for joining us. I've said on the Senate floor in an op-ed piece to Kansans back home that soft power, would use a different word than that in speaking about this, is necessary to avoid additional military actions or to reduce the need for military actions around the globe. Are there specific examples that I can point to, that you could point to me, that I can then indicate to those I'm speaking about, where our diplomacy, our assistance, food aid, and other things have made a difference such that you believe we prevented the need for military power to be utilized?
Senator, the example I used about Mahmoudiyya, which was now 10 years old, a peace agreement arranged under the auspices of USIP that is held for 10 years, the effect of that was dramatic in terms of the casualties being suffered by the 10th Mountain Division. They fell by a factor of 5 or 6 times, and also allowed those forces to be withdrawn so that the peace was kept with a smaller number of people. So that's a savings of lives, a savings of resources. And the cost of that operation, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, about $1 million. $1 million. And that's kind of what the military spends, about $11.5 million a day in Iraq during that time frame. So it's good value. That's the point. I think we make a mistake calling it soft power. There's nothing soft about it. You know, what our diplomats are doing, what our USIP people and our facilitators, they're risking their lives. These are in conflict zones. There's nothing soft about that. Maybe we ought to talk about it military and non-military, but I think soft is not an adequate description of the risks they run. Thank you.
Let me focus a minute on food aid. There are famines around the globe. I think there's a desire on the part of many Americans to respond. Part of the challenge we face are the civil authorities or military authorities in the countries where there are famines not allowing non-governmental organizations into their country, not allowing assistance. What is it that we do? Why do countries behave in a way in which they deny us the ability to save lives? And how do we respond to get a different result?
I think that this is where diplomacy comes in, actually, is to have ambassadors in those countries that are able to explain that we're not going in there to occupy, and that is part of it. But I also think that we need to understand that the famines are partially being created by desertification and climate change, and also by governments that want to starve their people. I think that's part of the issue, and therefore it's important to have contact with non-governmental organizations in those countries and try to show that starving people then create the mayhem that then leads to worse things. I also do think that Americans are the most generous people in the world. Our only problem is that we have a short attention span. And so I think that what needs to happen is that we need to understand that these are problems that are out there for a very long time. I do think, however, in those 4 particular countries, we have the most amazing operation in AFRICOM, which is an command that in fact is a way of dealing, and it's exactly what Steve was saying, in terms of cooperating of the civil and the military together in order to make a difference in a particular country.
Congressman.
Senator Moran, I would just point out to me, Amartya Sen, the Nobel laureate, has said that there's never been a famine in a democratic country with a free media.
I appreciate you saying that. I point that out, that our ability to, I don't know, I guess that's the point that needs to be made. If I could say it in my own words, although not as articulate as who you quoted, the ability to have a democracy when people are starving doesn't exist. Is that a fair summation of that?
It's much more difficult.
Much more difficult. I want to compliment Chairman Graham and the ranking member and this committee. Nearly $1 billion in food aid, famine assistance was included in the FY appropriation bill. That's a great development. Our subcommittee on agriculture funded the Dole McGovern food program, food and education program. Our appropriations process for FY17, I think, resulted in significant opportunities for help for people around the globe and enhances the chances that democracy survive or are created and reduce the chances that our military's actions are necessary. So Chairman Graham and members of the committee, thank you for your efforts in regard to trying to feed people around the world.
Well, let it be known to the people of Kansas, if Senator Moran had his way, all the farmers in Kansas would feed everybody in the world.
Well said.